what we saw Monday
Hmm.
at that funeral, it was like it just crossed the line for us. And Joni, this is the thing. There's not a booklet on how to be an anointed apostolic leader on television. Like her and Marcus, this is the thing. I'm gonna be real, and some people are gonna get mad because they probably think I'm being too nice, and some people get mad because they think I'm being too mean. But in regards to what they were able to build, there obviously you have the word of God, and that's super important. But the reality is there's a lot of traditions of men that we
Hmm.
carry along the journey.
Hmm.
And I know for Joni, she was a type of leader where if you challenged her, you might get kicked out of the circle of trust.
Jonathan Lamb did not get to say goodbye to his mother in front of the world. Not because he didn't want to. Not because he wasn't there. He was there sitting in the building, while security surrounded him, while a photo memorial looped on the screen without a single image of his face, and while a text from a security guard told him his guests couldn't sit with him and his name wouldn't appear on the program. This is a first-hand account of what happened inside Gateway Church on the day they buried Joni Lamb. By now, if you've been following this channel, you know the broad strokes of the Lamb family estrangement. The years of silence, the allegations involving Jonathan's daughter, the public grief that has played out in real time since Joni's passing. But what happened at that funeral goes beyond family dysfunction. What was described by people who were physically present in that room crosses into something that is difficult to watch and harder to explain. Kenyon and Katie, close friends of Jonathan and Susie, were at that funeral. They agreed to sit down and recount, in detail, what they witnessed. But before we get to their account, Julie Roy of the Roy's Report received a separate first-hand written account from a woman named Yvonne Torres Garcia, another attendee, no close ties to any party, simply someone who was there. Her account was shared publicly with her permission. Here is what she wrote. I was there at the funeral at Gateway. The church staff were very friendly and helpful as you walked in, but as you entered the door, there was this freestanding metal detector you had to walk through, brought in just for the funeral. Security and undercover guys were all over the church. I was unsettled about what Daystar brought in. Ridiculous. The security even followed Jonathan when he would walk into the foyer. Yes, poor Jonathan. My heart broke seeing how there were two cameramen just blatantly standing directly in front of his feet, like 1 foot away. I was upset about that. At the end, Gentazen was spewing out hate, so I walked out. The picture slides had one out of maybe 20 pictures shown with Jonathan in the slideshow. One picture, and it was him and a group of people. Never one of just him and his mother. That's horrible to know how the feud devastating the family continued. There were a lot of pics of Joni with Pete. It was like a slap in Jonathan's face. It indeed was a nauseated time to watch, but I walked out. That was Yvonne Torres Garcia. Now let's go to Kenyon and Katie. Kenyon and Katie have been walking closely alongside Jonathan and Susie through this season. They were at the funeral, and what they described, in detail, lines up with and extends what Yvonne witnessed from her seat. Let me walk you through the sequence of events they reported, because the timeline matters. Jonathan found out his mother had died approximately 10 minutes before it was announced on social media. Not from the family, not from Daystar. He was not in the room. He was not called. He found out the way strangers found out. In the days that followed, Jonathan reached out to the immediate family. According to Kenyon and Katie, nobody called him back. Nobody texted him directly from the family. The silence was total. Jonathan submitted a request to speak at his mother's funeral. He wanted to say something. Whatever had happened between him and other members of that family, he wanted to honor his mother. That request was sent in advance, and then nothing. Days of silence. Approximately 1 hour before the service began, a text arrived, not from a family member, from Shannon Kelly, head of security at Daystar. The text was a screenshot. It said, "Your request cannot be met. Your guests will have to find somewhere else to sit." The reason given, the programs had already been printed. The pamphlets were done. There was no room on the printed paper, so there was no room on the stage. Jonathan and Susie were seated, but not with their friends. They were placed to the far right of the front row, partially, obscured by cameras, surrounded by security. According to those present, the guest seating restriction had nothing to do with capacity. There was plenty of room. The restriction was a choice. Before the service even began, a memorial photo reel looped on the screens for approximately 25 minutes. Joni and Doug, Joni and Josh, Joni and Rebecca, Joni and Rachel. Jonathan Lamb, Joni's only son, did not appear in a single frame that stood on its own. Yvonne Torres Garcia, from her seat across the room, counted one image of Jonathan in the entire slideshow. And it was a group photo, not one picture of him alone with his mother. And when Kenyon and Katie eventually walked out into the lobby, security followed them.
Trust is earned. And so I know that there's been a lot of hurts and wounds, but we just thought that we were going to be walking into really some reconciliation, some hugs. And it was exactly the opposite. And, you know, an hour before the service started, they just pulled the rug. And so I'm sure we're going to get into more of that. Babe, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that. I know.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that, you know, like Kenyon had mentioned, we have just tried to walk alongside Jonathan and Susie and just be those friends that you hope your friend would be to you walking through a hard season like that. And, you know, it has come to the point where, just like how Kenyon had mentioned, being part of being there to be able to witness, you know, really a lot of this, like at least the last, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years. And then up to last week at the funeral, just, I think that, you know, disappointment is such a small word compared to how I felt when we were there. And so, you know, I was really just, you know, I talked to you briefly after, and I said, Julie, we need like a week, you know, because we just have to process all this. And we're not, you know, it's like, we're just friends there to support our friends. We're not family. We're not Jonathan and Susie. And I just, you know, I just couldn't imagine how grievous I felt. I can't imagine how their hearts were processing in real time what was happening. And so, you know,
well, let's go to what happened right there, because I think that was what was so shocking is how this thing all played out. Like you said, Kenyon, that the rug was kind of pulled out from under you. Katie, you got a text, didn't you, from Jonathan and Susie? What was that, right an hour before? And they had asked you to be there just for emotional support, right? Because I mean, I remember the day that she died, and I didn't know she was, I knew she had been sick. We all knew she was sick, but I had no idea that she was near death. And when it happened, I remember texting them, and Susie was just beside herself. I mean, just like, Jonathan didn't know. He didn't know. He just found out. I mean, literally 10 minutes before it went up on social media. So here's the funeral after, again, this has been just her passing and the way it happened, so shocking. But right before the two of you are about to go to the funeral and to be with your friends, Katie, you got this text, and tell me what the text said, or maybe it went to both of you. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a group text. And essentially what it said was, it was just a screenshot of, I can't remember who sent it. What is it? Shannon? It was just a screenshot of, I can't remember who sent it. What is it? Shannon? Text, and said, on the text, it said, basically,
Shannon Kelly, the head of security there at Daystar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It said, hey, your request cannot be met. Your friends are going to have to, your guests are going to have to find somewhere else to sit. And essentially what that meant was, I think Jonathan had sent in what he wanted to say at the funeral, you know, that he had some things that he wanted to talk about for his mom. And sorry, I get emotional thinking about it because I'm like, I can't imagine somebody telling me, sorry for you, you're not going to be able to speak at your mom's funeral. Like, he didn't ever not love his mom, you know, like regardless of what was going on, to take that right away from somebody just feels like not human, that you could do that. No empathy, obviously. And he was like, and to have somebody else, not even like the family, send the text or even return a phone call. Because at that point, I think Jonathan had still been reaching out to the family, and nobody had called him back or texted him from the direct immediate family. And so for the security guard to send you the only form of communication you're getting on the day of, you know, of the funeral, saying you can't speak because the pamphlets have already been made, everything's been printed out and who's talking. So you can't speak, and the guests that you were bringing cannot join you.
So Jonathan had volunteered to speak. I did know that. I know that they had ghosted him for a while. I don't know how many days before he had sent that. Got ghosted for several days. He didn't find out till the day of, though, that he wasn't going to be allowed.
It was like on that text, it was like your guest list cannot be met. Now, they did let Susie sit by her mom and dad. And I will tell you this, the seats being taken did not have to do with there wasn't room.
Right.
That was not the case.
There was plenty of room.
Plenty of room.
Plenty of room.
And And so it was a lot to take
Mm.
in. I was fearful of like, I hope that I just hope that I'm like, okay, that they could be calm. And they did a tremendous job. I mean, sometimes you're just like some of the things that Jonathan and Susie have been able to navigate.
Mm.
And I just know that if I was in their position, I'm like, man, me and my wife were fiery. And not that, you know, they're not, but you're just like, that's the grace. They handled it great. They were calm. I know Susie was already wrestling. I mean, you got to think that you are stepping not only into the lion's den in regards to people that the way they've treated you, but your daughter's abuser, you know, being there. And so, but you know, kudos to them. They were able to do that, but they, you know, the list was taken away. Jonathan was made known that you will not be speaking. Now, I'm not saying that they promised him that prior, but there was a hope of that.
Yeah.
And they kind of just shoved them in a corner where they just didn't have great visual of the ceremony.
They were way off to
And
the right, right? Like
way off to the
they're
right,
in the
yeah.
they're in the front row, but they're way off to the right. From what Jonathan and Susie texted me, it sounded like they were almost behind some cameras. They ended up
No,
obstructing the
yeah,
view. So they're like
right,
having
yeah,
to look to. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And the family, the rest of the family, was front and center.
Yeah.
yes, ma'am,
Correct? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and
So
Jonathan
that,
was also
wow.
surrounded by security. So I think if he did maybe
think about,
think about going up onto the stage to speaking, there would be no possible way he could get to the stage because there's such tight security around him that wouldn't have been possible for him. And one thing I also want to mention too, that was, you know, at the beginning of the service, that was truly heartbreaking, was they had a loop of the visual memorial for Joni on the screens with not one trace of Jonathan, not one trace of Susie, not one trace of their children. And it was like he was evaporated from the last, you know, 40, you know, years. I mean, obviously more than that for Joni, but it's like he was no longer existent in the Lamb family at that time. And it just looped and it looped. And it was just Joni and Doug, Joni and Josh, Joni and Rebecca, Joni and Rachel. But there was nothing of Jonathan. And we sat there before the service started a good 25 minutes. And for them to have to sit there and see that was just, I'm sure, heartbreaking for them. But as their friends, heartbreaking for us because, you know, it was like, wow, this could have been so different. But you chose to eliminate your brother, your mother's only son, from her visual memorial that you are showing the world. And what does that speak? Like, to me, it was just heartbreaking. And I know, you know, Kenan and I were just sitting there like shook that was even something that was happening in real time.
yeah, it was a lot to take in. And this is the thing, Julie, like we're not these young birds, you know, we're not in our 20s, we're in our later 40s. We've lived a lot of life. We've been in around a lot of powerful, influential celebrity types of people. And in the kingdom of God, there's just a standard that is not like the world. And when you see the world treat their family and their friends in a better way than what was done.
That was Kenyon and Katie. There is one more family whose story belongs in this account. A family whose presence at that funeral, and what happened to them, adds another layer to everything you have just heard. That is the Coleman family. We will continue to follow this story as it develops. If you are new to this channel, links to previous coverage on Daystar and the Lamb family situation are in the description below. This is Voice of Honor. We'll see you in the next one.